Hi everyone, welcome to Belle's Books. I'm Carly and today I'm going to talk to you about the books that I've read so far this year and my favourites. So just a quick life update. I haven't been posting very much on YouTube, as you may have noticed, just because life has been busy. I've had a lot going on and my reading still isn't kind of back to normal after my depression last year. So I'm still not reading that much, as in I'm not finishing that many books. So I'm back to reading, it feels like a lot, but my mental state means that I'm reading lots of things all at one time, so I'm not finishing as many books as I usually would do. Other than that, I'm doing okay. I'm still kind of up and down a little bit, and but for the most part I'm doing okay. I'm finishing my PhD this year, so that's taking up a lot of my time. I have 4 months left to finish my thesis, so I'm submitting it in December, and that's very scary. I'm currently writing my last chapter, and then I'm halfway through my last chapter. I have to finish writing that, which is fine, and then I have to write the introduction and conclusion, which apparently shouldn't take me very long, so I've got that earmarked for September. Then I've got October and November to edit the whole thing, which is the bit that I'm scared of the most, because that's a massive job. I started my PhD back in like 2016, so the stuff I wrote back then is like needs a lot of editing, because not only has my writing style changed, the stuff that I'm writing about has also changed. So yeah, that's a lot to do. So my PhD, we've been having some work done on the house, so got some new windows. Ooh, shiny new windows, because they were falling apart and need replacing. So there's been lots of like workmen and doing boring things like having to go to B&Q and Screwfix a lot. I hate those places and I have to go there a lot. We've had our kitchen replaced, so that's been a big job, and a lot of upheaval, a lot of mess in the house. And just like other boring household things that we've had to get done, which meant like making decisions and phoning for quotes and doing all the tedious stuff, like domestic adult things that I don't like doing. So there's been a lot of that. I also went to Glastonbury in June, which was a lot of fun. That was like my holiday for the year, and that was lovely. Nice break away, a week away in a field, listening to music, having a good time with no signal, so I didn't have to worry about being online, which is good. So that was nice, and yeah, just lots of things happening. So now let's talk about the books that I've read. So what I'm going to do is go through all the books that I've read this year. Like I said, I haven't been finishing a lot, so I've only got 13 books to talk to you about. I'm just going to kind of whiz through them, tell you my thoughts, and then pick my best 5. So let's get started. The first, what have I even done with it? Oh, it's on here. The first book I read in January of this year was Cold Enough for Snow by Jessica Al. This is a beautiful Fitzcarraldo edition. This is a very short novel, and it is about a mother and daughter on a trip to Tokyo. It's a very quiet novel, not much happens. It's very much about their relationship, and I'm very much into reading about mother-daughter relationships where they are difficult or there's some form of tension, and there is this in this book. So it's told from the daughter's perspective, and it feels very much like what she wants from her mother she's not getting, and it makes you think about like who's speaking and what she's saying her mother thinks or feels. Is that correct? Because it's coming from her perspective. Like I say, it's a very quiet novel. Lots of it made me think a lot about kind of what you expect from other people, particularly in that kind of close family relationship, and the way that you kind of project yourself towards other people. I found it quite emotional as well. I always do when I'm reading about these mother-daughter relationships, particularly towards the end. So like I say, it's a very quiet novel, not much happens, but I really enjoyed it. It made me think a lot. It hasn't like stayed with me massively. Now we're in the midpoint of the year, But just kind of flicking through it, I just thought, oh, actually the writing was really good in this. I really enjoyed it at like a sentence level. And it's one that I would revisit. I don't often reread, but this is one that I would go back to. So I would recommend this. Okay. Then I read a poetry collection, the only one I've read this year. And that was Nothing Is Okay by Rachel Wiley. I love this cover because these skates are amazing. This is a poetry collection that was fabulous. I loved pretty much all of the poems in here, and you don't often get that. So there are quite a lot of poems in here about body image, about being comfortable in your skin, taking criticism for your body from other people and still being proud of who you are. There's all sorts in here. It's relationships, queer relationships, being cheated on, which I can relate to, and there's one. What's the one that I was going to tell you about? There's one called Havisham. Havisham, inspired by Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, and it's like about Havisham. And Havisham is a character that I hold very close in my heart, for many reasons, not least because I used to be a very amateur burlesque performer, and I did have a Havisham act, and so I have played the part of Miss Havisham in a burlesque act. If you're wondering why my channel is called Belle's Books, it's because my burlesque name was Belle, so that's my other name. Anyway, that aside, this poetry collection, I can't recommend it enough. I bloody loved it. It's got poems on depression again, which I very much related to because I have now been through that myself. And I just loved everything about it. I would highly recommend this. There's some really fun poems in here as well. It's like serious topics, but also things that will make you spit out your tea with laughter. Bloody loved it. You can look her up on YouTube because there are videos of her reading her work, and I would highly recommend it. She's amazing. I loved it so much. Okay, then I read for my book club. A lot of the books I've read this year are from my book club because that's the one thing I've been able to keep up with. On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I had this on my TBR for ages. It was a very kind of anticipated 5-star read. I didn't like it so much. I was surprised by this. I found it quite a sad book, which I kind of knew it was going to be about. So it's told in the form of a letter this guy is writing to his mother, who can't read, so he knows she's never going to be able to read it. And it's about him growing up, coming to terms with his sexuality as a gay man, his initial sexual experiences with another boy, growing up with a mother and a grandmother who've been traumatized from the Vietnam War, the legacy of colonialism, the legacy of war, the impact of that on their family, generational trauma, all of that kind of stuff, the way that immigrants are treated within America. There's lots of big themes, lots of stuff going on here. And like I say, I found it quite sad. There weren't that many moments of joy in here. Again, there was kind of a difficult relationship between mother and son. And that was quite difficult to read. The thing that I found most difficult in this book was the instances of animal cruelty, which I was not prepared for. And there are like a few instances of things, even like just slight mentions of things. I'm like, it really kind of I just can't deal with that. And there was a fair bit of that in this, and I just was like, oh, I don't want to know that thing happens. It's just very much kind of the world is shit, people are shit, and they're shit to animals and each other. Cool. But like I say, it probably was actually more to do with the time that I'm reading it. You know, I've been through a difficult time and I know everything is shit. So reading about it did not help. But the language was very poetic. Sometimes it felt a little bit overdone. So there were some sentences where I was like, oh, this is beautiful. Very, like, you can tell he's a poet. I really loved his poetry collection, the first one. I haven't read the second one yet. So I just assumed I would love this as well. But there were some points where I was like, oh, this feels too much. It just feels a bit overblown. So this was kind of a 3-star for me. And I did struggle to get through it. So yes, slightly disappointing. then I read a book from the library. I'll insert a picture here. We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, because I thought, I've read some tough stuff, let's go for some YA fluff. And I really enjoyed this. This is a novel about a very rich family who own an island that they go on holiday to every summer. And it's told from the perspective of this young girl. I've forgotten all the character names because it was a while ago that I read it. And her kind of cousins, or like they're all family, their interactions on this island, and there's an adopted kid that is brought into the fold that she has this romance with. So it's kind of like that. Something happens, and you probably know because it's very popular on BookTube, but there is a big twist at the end. I'm terrible for predicting twists. Like, I never know what's coming. And because I was like, oh, there's a twist, I was almost trying to guess. But I'm just so rubbish at it. I just didn't get it. So when the twist came, I was like, huh, okay. I didn't see that coming, clearly. But I really enjoyed it. It was a fun time. I enjoyed reading it. I was very much kind of sucked into the story. Kind of the writing's nothing to shout about. It's just like, it was a fun plot. I enjoyed going along for the ride. And yeah, I just had a good time with it. It was a nice break from heavy stuff to go to a very kind of light YA novel. And that's what I wanted, and that's what I got. So I was very pleased with it. Okay, then I read another one I don't have. I read it on audiobook. Agatha Christie, A Very Elusive Woman by Lucy Worsley. Lucy Worsley is one of my favourite historians, and she's like as mad as a box of frogs. But I just love the fact, if you've never watched her TV shows, watch them, because they're so fun, because she clearly adores the history that she's telling you about, but also she loves getting dressed up, and I'm here for that, because I also love getting dressed up in costumes, and she's just like romping about, having a great time, dressed up as a Victorian and all this. Anyway, so this is a biography of Agatha Christie, and as usual, the thing I love about Lucy Worsley is that she takes a historical figure or someone famous that you think you know about, and she delves deep, she does her research, which is obviously very good because she's a historian, and she presents an alternative narrative to what has come before. And I love that about her. And I didn't really know much about Agatha Christie. I knew the fact that she'd gone missing for 11 days, and you know, it was reported that it was all like she did it for the press and all this. And so the case that Lucy makes is that she was traumatized and that she had depression because she found out her husband was cheating on her, and it was actually just a mental breakdown. And I don't know, I just kind of I related to that very hard. So I really enjoyed this book. It was narrated by Lucy herself. I love her voice, so it was really fun to listen to. I connected with it very much. I love the way that she kind of presents her life, and it was just sterling. We also went to see her at the British Library. She did a talk about the book at the British Library, and so that was really cool because I got to see pictures that must be in the book, but having listened to an audio, I didn't get those. So it was nice to see like the images of Agatha Christie when she was younger and her family and all this. So that was really cool. And I really enjoyed it. I've never read any Agatha Christie, so if you want to read Agatha Christie, because there are like some spoilers about her books, because she talks obviously about her extensive back catalogue and all of her books, so there are quite a few spoilers about certain plot lines. So if you want to read Agatha Christie and you haven't, I wouldn't recommend that first. If you don't want I wasn't that bothered. I'm just like, nah. I've seen like a couple of adaptations, so I know who the killer is in this. But after that, after I read the biography, I thought, actually, I want to read an Agatha Christie. So I read The Body in the Library by Agatha Christie. I forgot I had this copy, so I listened to it on audio. And I don't know, like, within the whole, her whole back catalogue, which is her best. But I thought, well, I wanted to give this a go. It was a fun romp, you know. Again, I'm so rubbish at guessing who the murderer is. I didn't guess. But it was a good time. I enjoyed listening to it. It was kind of standard writing. It wasn't anything to write home about. but it was nice to get wrapped up in a mystery. I don't often listen to crime or murder mysteries or read any of that kind of stuff, so it was good to actually read an Agatha Christie. So I had a good time with it. There were bits that I was confused about. So the premise of this book, if you don't know, is that there's a very posh couple, and they come down for breakfast one morning, and there is a dead girl in their library, and it's a Miss Marple solving the murder of this girl. There are various different suspects, as there always are in these books, and yeah, it was just fun. I enjoyed it, and so I've got the Crooked House up there, so I will read Crooked House, even though I do know who the killer is because I've watched an adaptation of that. But I'm here for Agatha Christie now. I very much enjoyed it. Then I read I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel, which was shortlisted for the Women's Prize. Can't remember now. I have talked about this already. I did enjoy this. It's a very uncomfortable read about your kind of presence online in social media. It is about a woman who is sleeping with a man who is also sleeping with lots of other women, doesn't treat her very nicely. She's also obsessed with this minor celebrity on Instagram. It's about her interactions and connections with this dude and this woman, and the way that she kind of interacts through social media and how that affects who she is in real life. Very uncomfortable because you'll recognise parts of yourself in some of these bad behaviours that she's exhibiting. And yeah, it's a must read, I think, particularly for today when you're kind of examining the damage that social media is doing to us. Okay, then I reread for my PhD The Argonauts by Maggie Nelson. Got my tabs in here. This is a non-fiction. It is a kind of a memoir. It uses auto theory. So Maggie Nelson is talking about her relationship with her partner Harry Dodge, who is an artist, and becoming pregnant. So at the beginning of the book, she's just kind of starting out dating Harry, and she's talking to a friend because Harry is trans, and she's saying that she doesn't know what their pronouns are. So she's kind of navigating having a discussion with him without knowing what his pronouns are at the beginning of their relationship. Was quite interesting. So she talks about the current socio-political climate in the States. I think this was like 2008 onwards. Her relationship with Harry as it goes on. They get married right before Proposition 8 was implemented. I can't remember what state it is, but banning same-sex marriage. And then they have a baby. So it's talking about her changing body through pregnancy at the same time that Harry's body is changing because he has top surgery and he starts taking testosterone. So his body is changing. And I adore this book. Obviously, I'm writing about it for my PhD. I just think it's fantastic. It's so clever, but it's not too clever. Like, it's very easy to read. It's a memoir, but there are lots of theorists referenced in here, lots of critical thinkers, but it's not in an academic way. So she will put the names of people that she's kind of referencing in the margins, and it's not done in an academic way where she's quoting people. She'll just kind of slip their theories or their thoughts into her own narrative, and I just think that's so clever. I love it so much. I will do a separate video on this because it's one of my favourite books of all time. Okay, then I read another audiobook. I read a short story collection. I read Send Nudes by Saba. This is a short collection of stories about girlhood, about growing up, embodiment. It's very embodied. There's lots of references to blood, which I'm a bit squeamish about, and yeah, just changing bodies, falling in love, friendships, just navigating the the hell that is growing up as a young girl. And I just loved it. I loved it so much. There were lots of I don't think there were any kind of stories that really fell flat for me. I really enjoyed all of them. It was a very strong collection. The one that stayed with me the most, I think, is the first one. It's about a girl who has a relationship with this older guy, and he has a dog, and it's about her relationship with this dog, which she gets closer to the dog, and then the dog kind of turns on him and gets a bit vicious. And there are just kind of stories like that are a bit weird. But that one has really stayed with me, I think, because it was very physical. There's descriptions of like the dog attacking people and, like I said, the blood. So yeah, I really enjoyed that short story collection. And there's some in there about like found family, about navigating issues with step parents and things like that. So I just really enjoyed it. Would highly recommend. Then I read Cursed Bread by Sophie Macintosh, which, like I've said before, I have mentioned this before, lots of people didn't like this, and I really don't know why. I found it a really strong, compelling book. It was a bit weird, you know, but I'm here for the weirdness. It's about a woman who is the wife of a baker. It's set in a small town, and the title of the book, Cursed Bread, and the premise is a whole village gets poisoned by the bread. So you think it's either the baker or his wife. Probably his wife, because the story's about her. But the book isn't about that. It's actually about this woman's friendship with another woman who comes to the town with her husband, the ambassador, and she's obsessed with like their relationship and this woman and their friendship, and it gets kind of both very intimate and toxic. Again, themes of being obsessed with someone. Like I said in my other video, really resonated reading these two close together, and things get weird shit happens, and it just kind of, it made me think a lot, and I just really enjoyed the weird factor. And it was just like creepy vibes. I'm just here for it. So I really loved that book, and I know lots of people just didn't get it, and I'm like, well, you know, I'm here to fangirl for Cursed Bread and Sophie Macintosh. I bloody loved it. Then I read, again for my book club, but this was my choice, because I'm going to reference it in my PhD, Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer. This is a chunky book. It's an experimental novel. It does interesting things with form. So there's lots of interesting stuff going on in terms of the white space on the page, the typography. There are some kind of different bold type things going on, and there are some pictures and some, where is it, things like this, dots. So this is about the life of a woman, Leah, who has cancer for the second time. It's about her life, so it's told in two different timelines. So in the present moment, where she has learned that she has got cancer back again and she's dealing with that, and in that situation she's got her young daughter Iris and her husband, whose name I've forgotten. So it's them going through this process of her having cancer again, and it's also told from a different perspective, where she was younger and growing up in a religious family, and there's a man that comes to stay, Matthew, who is being kind of taken in by her father, who's a priest, and trained up in the priesthood or whatever it is. And she kind of has this very intense and toxic relationship with him. It's a bit of a riff on Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights is mentioned in the book. I love this so much. Not just because it's experimental in style, which I really enjoyed, just the story. I really enjoyed the story of Leah and her life, and I just found it incredibly emotional towards the end. Well, all the way through, I just loved it. The writing is just stunning. Like, honestly, on a sentence level, there were some sentences that I read, I was like, oh my god, this is a debut as well, and she's so young. How could she write like this? It's just so beautiful and clever, and I just don't have the words to describe it. It's just I would recommend it. If not even like, oh, don't be put off by the fact that it's experimental, because it's not difficult to read at all. I just think the way that she plays with form does really work for like why she's doing it. Like there's, I won't be able to find it, but there's moments in here where the main character is hearing the words of other people in a different room, and they come in like sound waves. So those kind of things really work. And when people experiment with form, like what I'm looking for is, does it work? What's the point of it? How is it functioning? And all of the experimentation that she does in this book with form has a purpose. Like this, where like words are falling down the page, it all has it has a purpose and it works. And I just think it's so clever but easy to read and beautiful. Oh, I loved it so much. Okay, then I read, again for my book club, The Employees, a workplace novel of the 22nd century by Olga Ravn, translated from the Danish by Martin Aitken. This is a very short novel. This was chosen by someone else from my book club. And I did have it on my radar because I was like, oh yeah, I really want to read that. It's told in very short statements or vignettes. So they're only like a page each, maybe like a couple of pages at the most. And the premise is, we're on a spaceship, it's in the future. This spaceship is comprised of humans and humanoids. Each of these statements is from a human or a humanoid. You don't know which is which. Sometimes you can tell, but as you move through the book, it gets increasingly difficult to tell which is which. And they have picked up these objects from an alien planet. They've brought them aboard. And the premise is, all of these people are workers. It's a commentary on like workplace culture and capitalism, okay? But it's also how these objects that they've picked up are affecting them in different ways. It's about what makes you human. I can see this like on the curriculum of modules. Like, so when I was teaching at Birkbeck, I taught a module called The Production of the Human. It looks at like what makes us human. One of the key texts is Frankenstein. I can see this like paired with Frankenstein as like texts that talk about what makes us human, because it's very much, it dials into that. It's very clever. Like I say, it's very easy to read because it's just these statements, and it talks about the humans and the humanoids' relationship to these objects, how they affect them. It's very much around the senses, so there's a lot to do with smell in this book, and empathy and the feelings that these objects evoke in these people on this ship. At the beginning, there is a dedication to an artist who was the inspiration for this novel. So, if I can find it. So, I don't know how to pronounce this name at all. It says, with thanks to Leah Guldite Hesselund, oh my god, I've probably butchered that name, so sorry, for her installations and sculptures, without which this book would not exist. The first thing I did was look up those sculptures, so I had the image of those in my head as I read this. So when she's talking about the objects on the ship, I had those images of those sculptures in my head, which, I mean, I don't know, I found that quite helpful actually, because I was seeing what she had in her mind when she was writing it, I guess. And yeah, I just found that quite helpful. The other people in my book group didn't do that, so they didn't know what they looked like, and they looked it up after when we were all talking about it. I found this book quite moving, and particularly towards the end, where it all builds up to the thing that happens. And I really enjoyed the commentary. There's some really funny bits in here as well, because the reason that this was chosen was he wanted a book about workplace culture, which is kind of what it is, but there's a really funny bit in here where there's a human and a humanoid, and the human is like, oh, let's just have a break, yeah, let's just like sit down for 15 minutes and not do anything. And the humanoid, because they are built for work, can't understand that mentality. They're like, I don't really know why why the human wants us to like sit down and not do anything and not be productive. But I did it anyway because he seems to like doing it, and we keep doing it, and we keep sitting down for 15 minutes and not doing anything. It's not productive. But it just but like there's little instances like that where I was like, that kind of really resonates when you're at work and you're like, oh man, I can't be arsed, let's just sit down for 15 minutes and have a chat. So there are kind of like little funny bits in here, but also like very kind of gut-wrenching moments in here where the humanoids start to crave human things that they've never experienced, and the humans miss Earth. So this was a very moving novel, even though it's like really short and it's told in these tiny little vignettes. I would definitely reread this. I loved it very much. And the last novel I have to speak to you about is The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. I listened to this on audio, which I would really recommend. This I read because it was shortlisted for the it was longlisted for the Women's Prize. I was actually gutted that it wasn't shortlisted for the Women's Prize. I really loved this book. I love the main character, Geeta, and I found it so clever. It was both like kind of heartwarming, and it tackles really difficult issues. So it's about Geeta and her group of friends that she's not really friends with. She's a bit of a loner because she has this reputation in her village for being someone who has murdered her husband. Because her husband left her, everyone thinks for some reason she murdered him, and she's kind of living off that reputation because everyone stays away from her. And the community that they live in, and the threat to women's safety in that, well, just generally in that country, is really difficult because you know, you have to have a husband to be safe, and if you don't have a husband, you're kind of like ripe for the picking, if you like. So there's a lot of kind of violence towards women in this book. Some of it's quite difficult to read. Trigger warning for sexual assault. But Geeta is kind of enlisted by this group of women to help them kill their husbands. And it's so kind of, it's ridiculous and hilarious, but also, you know, dealing with really serious issues. The best thing about this book, in contrast to On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, there is a good bit of animal saving in here. So there's a dog that she adopts. I just love the dog so much, and I love the way she is with this dog that she names Bandit. And you know, the dog is saved, yay. And that's lovely. And I just really enjoyed like the commentary on the way that you can have female friendship being really supportive and nurturing, but also the way that women can be nasty to each other and tear each other down. I really appreciated that kind of very nuanced look at it. It also talks about the class system in India, and like particularly when you have no, not class, what is it, what's it called, it's like a colorism thing they've got going on, where it's like the lighter skinned that you are, the better you're standing in society. I've immediately forgotten the word for it. And there's certain groups of people that are treated very terribly because they're just seen as like the lowest of the low, which I kind of knew about. Like I've heard that name, the Dalits, and it's talked about the Dalit community and how they're just treated terribly because they're like on the lowest rung of society. So she's tackling very big issues, but it's in such a great way. She looks at really difficult themes, but it's all told in this really fun in this fun story, and it's just kind of a really satisfying read when you get to the end. I loved it so much. I love the characters. Like I say, there's a lot of nuance in there. I really appreciated that. I really enjoyed it. I was gutted that it didn't make the shortlist. I don't really understand why. Anyway, those are the books I've read this half of the year. Not many at all. And as you can probably tell, my favourites were The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. That was Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer. Cursed Bread by Sophie Macintosh. I'm still here for it. Where is it? I'm going to go in with a poetry collection. Nothing is Okay by Rachel Wiley. And Agatha Christie, A Very Elusive Woman, a biography, which, you know, doesn't happen very often, but I love that book so much. So yes, they're my top 5. A biography, a poetry collection, and 3 novels. I've only picked 5 because, like I say, I haven't read much this year. But what I have read has been good. And I'll show you what I'm currently reading, because like I said, my brain's all over the place. So I'm reading a lot of books and I'm not finishing them. Books I'm currently reading: Companion Piece by Ali Smith, which I'm reading for my PhD OVS. Got all my tabs going on here. I'm only 83 pages in. Bloody love it, because I love Ali Smith, of course. I'm still struggling through Pieces by Helen Oyeyemi. I have only got, I think, 100 pages left of this, but I have struggled with this just because, I don't know why, like Helen Oyeyemi, she's a bit of a Marmite author, and it's weird. It's some weird stuff going on in here, and sometimes I just can't deal with it, but I will finish it. I will. My current book club read, Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus, which I am simultaneously hating and also I can't stop reading it. I don't even know why. I hate the writing style, I hate the characters. I just think it's very bad. Why can't I put it down? I don't know. More on that later when I finish it. And I'm still plodding through Demon Copperhead, which I'm pleased about because I am loving it. I am 210 pages in, but it's a beast, you know. The thing with this is I am loving it. I'm loving the writing. I'm loving the character and the story. But because this is quite difficult at some points to read, like it's just, you know, it's a riff on David Copperfield. It's like bad thing happens, bad thing happens, bad thing happens. Something slightly not terrible happens. And when I get to that point, which I've got to that point, I'm like, oh, give the kid a break now. I'm like, I almost don't want to go back into it because I know it's going to go down again. I know some bad things more going to happen. I'm just like, oh, let's just have a rest because I can't deal with the bad stuff right now, guys. But I will carry on with it. I am. I'm just reading this non-stop for my book club because, you know, my book club's coming in. So that's why. Anyway, I've talked for too long. That's what I've read so far this year. That's what I'm reading. Talk to me in the comments below. Have you read any of these? What do you think about my thoughts on any of these books? Talk to me down below. Tell me what you've been reading. Tell me what your favourite books of the year are. And I will see you very soon in another video, I hope. Bye, everyone.